All right, so necessarily did this already with Gemini, but more of a simple equation that necessarily is it's probably using a little bit of bad logic in the motion of language and its literal form, but it necessarily a pseudo ideation of what should necessarily occur regarding the Cinnabar holdings to oil snapshot for a transition from oil and gas to Cinnabar Mercury energy and propulsion standard. A snapshot with smart contract softwares, and then a set date of transition that is about 3.14 years necessarily. As well, mentioned in the logic is the cryptocurrency ecosystem as MERC, international currency standard, pegged to, per MERC 1/20th of an ounce of Cinnabar, like you're familiar with what the gold standard was before. So Cinnabar is X amount of value today. How much will it be worth with this new application use case of energy, propulsion, and hull drive that necessarily all ships international will have? You can imagine, not just military industrial, high-class submarines, or esoteric rich people thing, right? Everything will have this, especially commercial shipping. How fast can you get from port to port? Much faster, and much safer than prop. Any number of weather conditions you can imagine, much easier to navigate, and much faster, and more stable. Generally, the whole drive rather than a prop driven. Much less energy used, i.e., less cost of shipping to market, so more profit coming and going. Anyway, so cryptocurrency to be shut down slowly in a transitional period of 18 months is Google AI suggested. It seems about proper, where all the major minor nodes of BTC, etc. networks are given the option to transition or shut down to using new perspective compute processing to maintain the MERC. It's not cryptocurrency, it's MERC digital currency that necessarily has a cryptographic ledger continuum and necessarily needing to be mined with continuity. So they still have a business model necessarily at some nominal scale, which isn't necessarily what it is today, and down regulating all sorts of things like international military industrial complex that's necessarily also need to be logicked to retool in this process as oil wars, finite commodity things are necessarily the territorial pissings things that cause conflict, interest, and continuity. So that's the next logic we'll probably do today, after this one. So how to retool the international military industrial complexes after ISO formulation, and everyone's invited if you're peaceful and not industriously say an entire nation state that is GIA or RISRA, region Biosynthoid Africana or gray infected Asiatic, mass populace, but are welcome to the party in sidechain as necessarily attached to the complex, but not with a seat at the table to motion directive or interest vector into the table concurrence of the community international that will form out of this new energy standard transition and legal apparatus with a single unified currency, MERC, International Monetary Standard, and then legal apparatus, intelligence, and necessarily a military force of an amalgamation to impose international law. Like right now is hodgepodge, And because of the hodgepodge, persons run from here to there, to here, to there, to there. And any number of bullshits happen, within the interdomain of the amalgam, and the divide and conquer tactic works with continuity because this is the case. So for full Earth creation away from gray paradigm, generally bad code of mind, softwares, computer architecture, genetics, we have to establish an international, actual, functional, legal governing body that can impose, with power, the law that's asserted, not just to say, I'm the ICC, we made a judgment, who cares? So that doesn't work. And the other assemblages, each into the moan, have certain functions and function in pseudo ways, but not in an all-assuming way, like this will motion. So this isn't the, end of the Bible where, or the end times, where the devil creates a, no, that's not what this is. We're in outer space, to please the plebes here. This is a Cinnabar mining node amongst a vast network of Cinnabar mining nodes in a multipolar alien humanoid biped universe, to repeat, that will be again in 5 minutes, regardless of anyone death-gripping rocket technology or oil and gas to the grave. Everyone else will move on while you're doing that. And you'll look very silly on paper as your bank account goes down and everyone else's goes up. So during this process, what's going to be very valuable? So our friendlies should place their bets on what? Titanium, nickel, nitinol. Cinnabar spoken for in being part of this snapshot. But necessarily the regions where those are massive deposits known, I'm sure there's more, and that needs to be accounted for in new discovered deposits on Earth in the equation of, being part of this diffuse, and reclassifying Cinnabar as being not able to be personally owned at scale. I mean, you can own a certain amount of it, but you can't be like a majority or minor unto yourself without being attached to a nation state or an already established private large oil corporation that retools to this model of, mining or flowing Cinnabar to market for the industrial application of energy propulsion or whole drive propulsion. So I guess in the process of this, everyone that's looking for an opportunity, getting very good with creating manifolds using nitinol, being able to manipulate nitinol at scale, and building the general, being able to elaborate any hull of any ship, superimposing hull drive upon it, bringing the ship into dry dock and then plopping that on and off it goes. The prop that was on it, gonzo. And so we just saw, to get that link here, the fishing bill that was the fish bill. I don't know what the name of it was, that Trump signed, I guess, a week and a half ago or so, that opened up that fishing territory back to those vessels, and they said, electric boats are crap. And I would absolutely agree with you that today's electric boats are crap. And just like, Teslas or any number of things, where's the charging station, honey? We just, oh, fuck. We're out of energy. What do we do? How far is the charging station? Not as close as a gas station. Fuck. So that's why the electromagnetic harmonic convergent energy reactor, because infinite range. So your shipping vessel can stay out in the water an infinite amount of time. Isn't that nice? Your cargo vessel doesn't require an enormous oil and gas reservoir to power its prop. Just a small mercury reactor, not very big, powering the whole drive. that moves much faster. It's not just the submersible that's 250 knots to 45 knots comparative, but the larger vessels, within reason, as you're experiencing forces at speed. So you can't just, in a retrofitted hull, go 250 knots all of a sudden with a bunch of cargo in tow. So more so, this enables very safe traversation of rough waters, and maneuverability, as the fluxation modulation is very much microvariantially able to move a large vessel in a very strange way in the water, where prop and rudder are very crude. Yeah? So all sorts of cool stuff here, condensing and logic. So this mostly, just a very short session at the bottom of the continuum here. This very basic forward-facing Google AI continuum, smart contract and that necessarily isn't probably proper code, didn't really stare at it for the smart contract softwares, but you have a pseudo, reference point for the software for smart contract that necessarily needs to be run on immediately. This is a good rule of thumb. Perspective compute with cryptographic produced out of the elaboration of compute and softwares on the back of it to produce a cryptographic standard on MERC that is impenetrable and above the layer of this perspective compute architecture that is scalar so much elaborately faster than current standards of compute. So you build a cryptographic standard on built perspective compute hardware and softwares that is impossible to break with that hardware. It would take 1,000 years. So that, you don't build the cryptographic standard on traditional compute and software's, ability to assume cryptographic standard with speed and, assumption, and AI is trying to formulate that, cryptographic standard here, thinking quantum compute, because I think it quoted that, quantum compute protection or whatever, and much faster than quantum is perspective compute architecture, and actually a replacement for traditional transistor simultaneously. So it's the actual next step of processing there. So yeah, I guess that's it for the word salad introduction to this basic training session. So we'll mine out the micro minutia details of it, and necessarily you see the 40% holders of Cinnabar, continuity of ownership of that Cinnabar reserves, and 60% of Cinnabar reserves international diffuse applied to the one-to-one snapshot. And we have to think, well, is that enough of a ratio? We have to satisfy both parties, but we want to, it's most important to, we want to satisfy everyone, but to enable a peaceful transition. And the oil and gas behind Military Industrial International likes to throw fits, hissy fits, if not felt as something is fair or not. So is that a proper ratio? I don't know. We'll think about it over the next few days and see what necessarily it should be, or maybe it should be that. But keep in mind also, like titanium, so copper, and amalgamation, and other. See amalgamated metals and metals for encapsulating propulsion of the helical, the linear, and the gravitational lensing, and the necessarily adjacent to these metals. And the regions where Cinnabar is, necessarily real estate, you can imagine, will go up drastically in those places, as they'll become some of the richest centrifuge places in the world. I think Spain was one of them. So something to keep in mind, you can place your bets on all kinds of things on the ups and downs, the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust here, right? And peaceful transitions for all ups and downs in the process, transmuting those industries in the process of, dissolving them out of relevance. We're not trying to cause a cataclysm at any layer here, to make very clear. All right, so here's the basic session. That's just the continuity of the previous sessions regarding this.